Hello, I'm EnterElysium and welcome to the fortnightly Q&A where Patreons ask me questions and then I fail to answer them properly. I guess that's a decent description. Today I have a number of questions. I have, again, printed out a sheet because that way I will hopefully not lose or forget or mangle any of them. And I will attempt to answer them. So, starting to begin with, if you had to be trapped in a full dive virtual reality game like Sword Art Online, what game would you choose to be trapped in? Something fun and heartwarming and enlightening and not depressing. And then I think of most of the games I play and go, nope, that would probably end up with me dead. That would end up with me dead. I would be dead there. I can't think. I was like, I thought initially, like, okay, I'll go with some sort of Care Bear game. And then I'll be like, if I actually got trapped in a Care Bear game, I would quickly go insane. So that's not an option. What game is there that's just, like, there's a variety of stuff so you don't go insane of doing the same thing over and over again, and it's fun to be in, and it's just heartwarming and enlightening and fulfilling and not just about death or whatever. I'm trying to think. There isn't. Not RimWorld, because I've killed myself. Not XCOM, because I would probably get myself killed. Like, you know, me in charge of me. I guess if you weren't in charge... That's the problem with strategy games, right? I play a lot of strategy games, and if you're in the game, you'd be playing one of the pawns, and the pawns have the problem of they don't have an overlord. I guess... I have no idea. Not a zombie game. Not a depressing game like This War of Mine. That would be terrible. No, I really wouldn't want to live through that. And I know people in real life have pretty much lived through that. And you know, that's pretty much why I wouldn't want to live through it. Because, you know, reading their accounts, I'm like, no, that would not be good for me. No, I mean, you know, they wouldn't want to live through it if they had the choice. I would definitely not wish that upon anyone. I have no idea what I'd pick. Let's pick something innocuous. Something like... I was about to say a James Bond game, one of these James Bond games. Then I'd be like, actually, if you were in a James Bond game, the number of people to the number of player agents, so the number of people, like pawns or dupes or just general grunts to Bond, is so high you'd probably end up as a grunt that James Bond would kill. And I'd not like to die. I'd like to stay living, if possible. So yeah, not something like that. And definitely not Crusader Kings 2, because I'd probably get assassinated or something. You know, you get all these traits and you'd get hedonist and you'd get whatever the one is that likes torture, and then some would assassinate you and it'd be terrible. It'd be like living in Game of Thrones, which would be terrible. I guess something that involves sword fighting, because at least I'm better than probably 98% of the population, which isn't saying much. But at least I'm better than 98% of the population at that. So, I don't know, Nidhogg? Which is a game that most of you probably not have heard of. I do have a couple of videos on my channel. I'm very drunk when I'm doing those videos. But it's a great game. So, I guess Nidhogg. And that's spent way longer doing that first question than I thought I would. Next question. If it's possible, once a month for Twitch fans to vote for a game to stream. Okay. I like to keep Patreon, YouTube, and Twitch subscribers separate. Now, the reason I like to keep the Patreon YouTube system and Twitch separate is because of the subscribers on Twitch. Subscribers on Twitch pay a monthly fee, which gets split between me and Twitch, and they get, you know, the ability to do certain things on Twitch because of it. And I don't want to mix the whole YouTube and Twitch system, because people who Patreons to the YouTube system get just some small perks to make up for the fact they're donating, whereas people on Twitch, our subscribers, split their money both between me and Twitch, so it's more of a businessy thing than the charity-typey thing that Patreon is. And Twitch also gets, you know, they get emoticons, they get certain things from chat, they get their names put into certain things, which is the same thing I've done with the Patreon system. Although the Patreon system, I think, was implemented after the Twitch system. The Twitch system tried that out. And I don't really mix the two, because if you are a Patreon and you get to be a Patreon of both YouTube and Twitch, then after doing that, it's like, oh, And also, if you want to subscribe again to Twitch, it's like I'm asking you to subscribe twice. And now, I know Patreon subscriptions are different, but they're similar enough in their recurring payment model that I would feel fairly uncomfortable. Now, I understand it's perfectly fine and legitimate. I know plenty of people who have Twitch channels and have Twitch channels who have subscriptions on their Twitch channels, also have Patreons. But it just feels a bit weird to me as a YouTube-centric person to have a Twitch channel which also has a subscription system, whereas Patreon is basically a donation-based subscription system. And it would kind of feel weird to be like, okay, yeah, we're going to go on Twitch and play a game, me and the Patreons. By the way, do you want to subscribe again? It just feels a bit weird. I don't want to be double charging you for effectively a very similar system. It just feels odd. I'm interested to hear your comments on this one in the chat, the comments, because I personally feel a bit weird about it. Now, it depends what you feel about it. I'm still uncertain about this one, but I feel weird enough about it that I don't want to implement it. Let me know what you think, because I certainly think that how I feel about it is certainly a legitimate concern. My feelings may vary. I might change my mind or whatever, but currently that is how I feel. So that's something I definitely want to at least know how you guys feel about. So, boop, down below. Would you ever play a full Paradox Grand strategy? So you go from CK2 to EU4 using the Converter DLC. That's, I guess, the short version of that one. Yes, I actually really want to do this. However, initially, how I got into Paradox Grand Strategies was I played a lot of CK2. I played CK2, Crusader Kings 2, which is basically a bit like EU4, European Class 4, except much more heavily focused on your dynasty, your character, your family, controlling the land you control, so your duchy, your country, your empire. And then in EU4, it's all about the country. So initially, that's how I played, and then I moved into EU4, and I found that EU4 had a much better peace system, war system, etc. And it's a newer game, so obviously it's going to be a bit more sort of user interface friendly. And I really do want to do this whole CK2 to EU4 thing, because you can port the two. So, for instance, we could take a dynasty, a character, a family, and we could build them strong. We can assassinate people and take their lands by marriage or whatever. Those hand movements are pretty much required for marriage, by the way. Normally it's just a ring on the finger, but for me it's just, all this. But then we could take it into EU4 using the Converter DLC, and we could move the same family with their own country into EU4, which would be amazing, okay? It would be really fun. And I do actually want to do that. However, I haven't played CK2 properly for about a year and a half, so at least a year and a half. So A, I would need to play it again to get up to speed in it. B, I did say A, didn't I? So B, I was going to do it a few times, but then all these new DLCs for EU4 came out. And the DLCs introduced certain aspects like, they introduced a lot more provinces in certain areas outside of Western Europe, which is why I chose to do an India-centric campaign, because I wanted to focus on the new territories, the new provinces, the new sort of, the much more subdivision, much more divided countries, I guess you could say. That there were more provinces to be, taken advantage of. So it kind of changed up the game down there. And that's what I wanted to really do a thing on. However, I do really want to do a long campaign. And there is actually a fan-made converter to go from EU4 to Victoria 2. And Victoria 2 is basically a Victorian-esque strategy by Paradox. It's an older one again. But I don't have any experience with that. I've never played it. I have it. I've downloaded it. I have looked at it. I've loaded it up and I've gone, ugh. I need to learn to play that. It would be fun to take it into that, but I feel that doesn't make as good a YouTube video. I don't think it's something I could really do a good series of, especially since it's an older game. However, Hearts of Iron 4 comes out next year, and if someone made a fan converter to take a game from EU4, skip Victoria 2 and go straight to Hearts of Iron 4, that would be awesome. Because what we could do is we could start in CK2, we could make a nation under a family, we could take the family and turn it into a country, take the country from EU4, make it bigger, and then go into Hearts of Iron 4, and Hearts of Iron 4 is basically a World War, I think it's mainly a World War II game simulator, and we could take it in there and we could become part of the Axis or the Allies, and we could take over countries and fight, and we could have our own alternate parallel universe where this country came to fruition in about, the 8th century and then influenced history. And that'd be kind of cool. That's what I like about these Paradox Grand strategies, is influencing history and seeing how an alternate history would play out if we did this with a country. So what my impact or what your impact would be on history is what I really like about Parents Ground Strategies, personally. So, as for whether I'll do a series, maybe. It's been a focus of my mind. I would like to do it, but if I don't do it because, I've got the other things to do, if, say, a fan-made converter came along that took EU4 and straight into Hearts of Iron 4 when Hearts of Iron 4 comes out next year, that I will jump on so quick, I will be breaking the speed of light. I will be, basically disproving specific relativity. It will be amazing. But that's just... I would love to do that. It would be amazing. I love these long story arcs. Personally, I'm a fan of long story arcs. I know they don't tell their story as well on YouTube because people tend to come in and out of series, but that's something I really enjoy. What's the next question? Are you a Star Wars fan? And if so, have you seen the new trailer for The Force Awakens? What are your thoughts about it? The new trailer. My main thought is the lightsaber that has the crossguard. People went, "Oh my god, how dare you!" And I went, crossguards are really, I have a sword. Let's get the sword. And I'll knock things over. Swords, I should not hold it by the blade. Swords, okay. Crossguards are really important. Crossguards, if I hold the sword like this, if I parry or if I block a blade, the sword tends to move down or up my blade. Now, if it moves up my blade, it's free again. I can let it go. It can actually hit me. If I block it with my guard, then at least I have control of it. Guards are very important in combat. Now, of course, lightsabers don't have a weight as such. They just have the weight of the handle. The blade itself doesn't have a weight, which makes it very different from a normal sword. But these are really important. It kind of makes complete sense to have them. However, the lightsaber that you see in the Force Awakens trailer has a little bit of the lightsaber hilt coming this way and a little bit of the lightsaber hilt coming that way so that they can project the secondary blades, or whatever you want to call them, out to the side. And this means that technically if you parried, okay, and someone's lightsaber parried here and then runs up to here, because you're holding the blade and they run the blade up, it could chop our lightsaber off. Now, of course we're going to get these extended universe arguments about, the lightsaber hilt is obviously made of X or Y alloy that is immune to lightsabers. Firstly, I would say Extended Universe is becoming somewhat defunct because of how Disney's just gone, okay, the Extended Universe certainly after the films is kind of meh now. And secondly, you're just kind of clutching at straws a little bit. We don't know for certain. What it certainly is just a way of making a new design of lightsaber to be able to spark imagination and get this conversation going. And the conversation we're having right now is the exact same conversation they thought about when they came up with the design. When they came up with the design, they went, okay, we need a new lightsaber design. And this new lightsaber design has to be so different, but also somewhat sensible that we can have conversations about it. And these conversations can pervade the internet and get the talk going about their movie. So what effectively has happened is they've made a new lightsaber design partly for just PR. And the conversation we're having right now is the exact part of their PR. Now, I'm not knocking them for it, it's incredibly good PR, and it's actually a fairly good conversation, because I can get out a bastard sword, and I can start talking about how the hilt or the guard, really helps the defense or whatever. This sword is not a particularly good example of an actual period sword, it's an okay example, I guess. It's also a little bit blade heavy because it's Czech. But, this is exactly what they're thinking of. That we'd have a conversation about that sword, that guard, that hilt, that blade. So it's interesting to note that by doing that, they've got themselves a lot of free publicity. I mean, you could probably search for this topic in Google or YouTube and get a bazillion articles. Bazillion is not a scientific term. It probably means at least a few hundred, at least how I mean it right now. But yeah, no. As for the Force Awakens trailer, the main thing I took away from it is people, when they come to Stormtroopers, still tend to think that Stormtroopers are clone troopers with different armor. They aren't. Stormtroopers are humans in armor, clone troopers are clones in armor. Because people were like, oh, how dare they make a clone black? And it was like, he's not a clone. And people were also like, oh, lightsaber hilt. We've already gone over that. That's kind of what I took away from the trailer. As for Patreons, you may see a video coming soon about the Force Awakens trailer. As for people who are watching this who aren't Patreons, who get it a week later, who are on YouTube, you may have seen the video already, or it might be just coming out. We'll see. But there is more coming about the Force Awakens trailer on my channel. Would you sell your channel for an allotted salary where you get administrative control and I assume creative control? I think that's what you mean. Administrative control and creative control. Although you now have a fixed, stable income while the excess goes to the buyer. Personally for me, money isn't an issue. I don't have a large lifestyle overheads. I'm not like a hard drug user or something who needs a lot of money. I tend to be completely fine with a minimal amount of money. I don't need ridiculous amounts. I don't need a sports car. I kind of think that's a little bit superfluous for me. This is personally what I live my lifestyle by. I live my lifestyle by sustainable. Like, I don't need to buy anything that I know I can't afford. Like, I'm the person who buys a sofa, I buy a sofa. I don't buy it on finance and have to pay it back in the future. Because, personally, I don't know if I'm going to be able to pay that back in the future. Why would I pay more in the future than what I can pay now? Because then now also offers me certainty, right? That's how I live my life. And it's a boring lifestyle, but it's also a really financially sensible and secure lifestyle, which, again, sounds really boring, but it's actually really good for you. Try that. So personally, taking an allotted salary rather than taking what I take, which is really flexible depending on how the adverts do and how my videos do, and you never know if a video is going to really take off. That is pretty random. Personally, provided the salary, in inverted commas, was acceptable, then I probably would, but the salary would have to be, physically able for me to live. But yeah, no, I probably would, because it would iron out the bumps and ups and downs of YouTube. Because if you don't know, adverts, the value that adverts provide to creators, and I assume to YouTube, goes up for like the massive periods, like say up to Christmas, when people are trying to sell you whatever products they're advertising on YouTube. And in January, when they're like, okay, we spent our advert budget, we don't need any adverts, it drops massively. So you get this up and down, and I wouldn't mind not getting rid of the up and downs and just taking a fixed salary. Getting rid of the up and downs, I'm pretty much sure every YouTuber would tell you would be a nice thing. It's just a way of the market. In fact, we're sole traders, just effectively buying adverts through a third provider who is Google, who we don't know who the adverts are, etc. It's generally how it works. Also, my kitten is licking my sword, which is not good for the sword. I should probably not allow that. Let's get rid of the kitty spittle. Next question? It entirely depends on what the person would want. Also, if they bought it, they would have some sort of control. It depends what sort of control they had. I prefer to be none. I like the fact that I can present myself as me, not being presented as a representative of a third party. I like to be me. I guess that's how, just a general thing. I don't want to be disingenuous. But if they allow me full administrative and creative control, then yes, of course I would take an X amount rather than a fluctuation salary. Could you give a shout out to my girlfriend Mel? You're her favourite YouTuber. Hi Mel! Do you own a telescope? Amateur astronomy is an awesome hobby. No, I don't. Mainly because of where I live, there's a little bit too much light pollution. I'd need to go further out. I used to live in an area that was fairly so remote, you wouldn't that much need an amateur telescope to really see much. I mean, I remember when walking home around Christmas, when it's, the coldest period, when the lights are, as dim as they normally are around Christmas, because, it's so black so early in the night sky, that you could look up and you could see, parts of the Milky Way, you could see constellations, and that's, personally, when I go back to my parents for Christmas, I tend to still remember seeing that, and that's something I go out to see. I go, okay, walk outside, and then you look up, and frankly, I'm a weird person for not owning a telescope, considering I'm about to say this, but I find looking up at the night sky when it's really dark and you can see everything absolutely bloody amazing, because it shows you a certain amount of scale, perspective. You are so small, the galaxy is so big, and each of these little twinkles of, is probably a star much bigger than our sun that's a burning ball of plasma, and has its own planets or whatever around it, etc. It really gives you some kind of... It makes all your problems seem so small, so completely manageable, I guess. I mean, insignificant is another word, but it makes everything seem so well, we should manage this because, well, the universe is a lot bigger than us, and the universe manages. So why can't we manage one planet, I guess, is a way of putting it. But no. Also, because of the way the planet rotates and so on, certain periods of the year you get to see more of the Milky Way than you do other points. I can't remember which way around it is. I think it's something like winter, you get to see more of the Milky Way. Now, of course, if you're in the Southern Hemisphere, please flip this. I'm not going to be part of the North Hemisphere chauvinistic group who thinks that, the North Hemisphere is everyone. Have you played... there's many more questions this one, actually. It's the end of a cinematic fight scene in a 1980s action movie starring you. What one-liner do you deliver before landing the killing blow? I would say, and I've thought about this, right? I know exactly what I'd say. Alright. I'd stand there, and as I swing my sword for the final blow, I would just say, with a very dull tone, something witty. Just those words. It would be an in-joke. Something witty. Kill. Because, pretty much any line would do, so something witty. I don't know if most people find that amusing. I personally think it's kind of a nice in-joke reference. It's breaking the fourth wall, it's taking advantage of the tropes, but maybe some people prefer not breaking the fourth wall. If Molly is 1.5 meters tall and Joseph is 10% taller than Molly, how tall is Dave? Okay, so if Molly is 1.5 meters tall and Joseph is 10% taller, so Joseph is 1.65 meters tall. How tall is Dave? Right, well, we don't know how tall Dave is, right, from those facts. So let's randomize about Dave. Now, Dave is most likely male. He's got a male-gendered name. So let's assume, based on the probability, that Dave is male. Dave, most likely the average age for someone in the UK, he's probably somewhere in his middle age. He's probably something about, 30-something. With an aging population, he is probably middle-aged. Okay? So what is the average height for someone who is an adult? The average height, I believe, is about 1.82 meters for a guy. So for someone who's male, who is middle-aged, the average height is 1.82 meters. So I'm going to say 1.8 meters to your number of significant figures. Not based on any of the facts you've given me, but based on an average. Because apparently, Joseph is only 10% taller than Molly, and Joseph is fairly short for an average-aged male. Assuming he is both average and male. But I only have averages to work off. There you go. You didn't expect me to answer that one, did you? Have you ever played any tabletop RPGs before? Okay, so I've played a few before. I've played several, actually. But personally, my feel is, I don't like... A lot of people, right, D&D, Dungeons & Dragons, is the quintessential RPG. Personally, I don't really like it. I've never played it, I've read a lot of the rules, and I know a lot of the general background for the general setting. And I've gone and looked at the setting and I've gone, I'm not a massive fan of the leveling up and the loot being the draw. I'm more a fan of the story. And the story does depend a lot on your person who's running it, so your GM or your DM, so your games master or dungeon master. The actual draw of leveling up and looting up, I think, should be built in character. So your character's motivations should be your draws. And Dungeons & Dragons tends to be, I am generalizing here, the draw of the game tends to be being more powerful or, getting the loot at the end of the quest. So you end the quest, you kill the bandits, what do? You immediately loot them. That's the normal answer for what you do in a Dungeons & Dragons situation. You've killed them, what do? I loot them. It's also a very Skyrim-y thing to do. However, what I tend to play is, and my personal favourite, although I am a little bit hesitant about a couple of the changes recently, is stuff like Shadowrun. Now, Shadowrun, if you don't know it, is an RPG set in a future sci-fi world. It's set currently about 2073, in which magic comes back to the world slowly, and you have this transhumanism element alongside magic. So you have these people who are mages alongside people with bionic arms or whatever. And I find that a really cool universe, because you have... Now the great thing, mainly because as a GM, as someone deciding a campaign, deciding plots, you can take from anything. So let's say Buffy the Vampire Slayer, vampires. you can take vampires and you can put them in. And then you can also say, okay, vampires who need to drain blood essence of people. You can also then sort of throw in, well, maybe these vampires are addicted to some sort of hard drug. You could throw in sort of elements of modern day realism. You can throw in cybernetics. You could take a futuristic element. So you could take something like, say Minority Report, the film Minority Report, where you can tell people's murders in advance and the whole morality about that. You could take, say, someone who is magical, who can tell when people are going to commit crimes. Is it ethical to, arrest people before they've committed a crime, when they haven't actually committed the crime, but to prevent them from committing a crime? There's so many things you can do with Shadowrun because it combines elements of fantasy, modern day grittiness, along with sci-fi. Now, the rulebook itself is very in-depth and has problems, but I really do like the element there, and it's also a very, how would you say, mortal game. You can die fairly easily. It's a game about don't get shot, plan. If you get into a firefight, you're doing it wrong. That's often the motto of Shadowrun. If you get into a firefight, if you fire a bullet, you're doing it wrong. Now, it's not always right. I mean, you can do stealthy stuff. You could be shooting a silenced bullet or whatever, and maybe a firefight is part of your aim. But often it is a game where you have to, as a player, the GM goes, okay, you need to pull off a bank heist. Go! Sure, how are you going to do it? Whereas in something else, like a DM game, a D&D game, you would be given a plot and you'd be hand sort of led across every element. So in Shadowrun, you're much more like, okay, I will go out, I will buy plastic explosives so I can blow the bank vault. I will chat up a store clerk, and maybe we'll get a relationship where I can learn the bank vault code, or something like that, or I could learn the roster. It evolves a lot more player agency, and it allows you to definitely use your character to the utmost. Also, it has a non-class-based system, whereas D&D has a class-based system, and I prefer non-class-based systems. Basic class-based system is, I'm going to be a warrior, I'm going to be a guardsman, I'm going to be a cleric, etc. I prefer you be able to devise a character completely from scratch, so you can actually devise a character to your goals, your aims, your concept in your head. Now, it's less friendly to a new player to an RPG, certainly, because a new player to an RPG goes, I don't know, and you need some guidance. But something like Shadowrun, which doesn't have a class-based system, is certainly helpful in that regard. And now that's a lot of Shadowrun. But I've also played a lot of something like Dark Heresy or Deathwatch, which is based in the Warhammer 40k universe. And I do like Warhammer 40k for the universe. Less iffy about Games Workshop now. Things are fairly expensive. But I like that as well for the tone and the grittiness and the setting. Although I'm a little bit iffy about the original Dark Heresy, although I realise they have brought out Dark Heresy 2, which I have not read. So the rulebook I would have to read. Dark Heresy, the original one, had a little bit of ups and downs to its power and a lot of flaws, although I realise they have retconned or errated most of those changes. Shall we read another question? What's the hardest facet of XCOM for you? What is the most challenging about XCOM? Easy. Right, the most challenging thing about XCOM for me is when I play when I'm tired, or I play for a long session where eventually you become tired, or you become hungry, or you become distracted, or you become, somewhat disengaged from the game. Right, when you eventually become a little bit tired, what I tend to do is I tend to make stupid errors. And my problem is, generally, I think in most games, is not that I'm a terrible player, but I make stupid errors when I start to make mistakes. I don't tend to just become worse overall, I just tend to become like, my gameplay will be like, if this is a graph of my gameplay, bloop, 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 and there'll be these blips where I will make just stupid mistakes, and I will get someone flanked or something in XCOM. And I think what my issue in XCOM is, my hardest thing to gather is that. Now, I realise that for a lot of people coming straight from XCOM to XCOM Long War, I guess this is about XCOM Long War, by the way, since I have a series up on it. The people coming from XCOM to XCOM Long War, the biggest change is the sheer difference, having so many people, having a lot more research projects, and a lot about the air game, because the air game is very centric. Whereas I think I've gathered the general changes there. I think the biggest part for me is not screwing up these little things, which I then just go, okay, normal things, I've moved to a stupid position. And suddenly I've made a mistake. And Long War does have very large knock-on effects if you screw up something. There is a death spiral in Long War, which they are trying to stop, but it exists to a fairly large extent. And as soon as you make one mistake, you can get more mistakes because you have more mistakes, and then you're weaker, and then because you're weaker, you get more mistakes, and so on. If you could choose to live in a fictional world, which would you choose and why? I guess this is very similar to which universe would I like to be in full dive in. If I could live in a universe, I mean, Discworld is something that I really like, but I don't think I'd want to live in the Discworld universe, considering how unwell off most of the people in the Discworld are. I mean, we don't have computers for a start and no YouTube, so obviously that's not going to be my first choice. What would we go for? Ooh. I guess I would say something along the lines of Ghost in the Shell, just because I like the transhuman element. I like Ghost in the Shell, by the way, an anime, sci-fi anime with sort of cybernetics and post-humanism and full dive realities, etc. It's a really great show. Go watch it. The movies, they're okay. The show's a lot better, especially season 1. But no, I really like that. I like the idea of being able to be transhuman. I like the idea of being able to better myself, also physically as well as mentally, by, just cybernetics and whatever. That just sounds like a really cool idea. And also, full dive immersion is great. Now, I have my own reason for liking full dive immersion, but it just sounds so much fun to be able to, pretty much jump into anywhere or anyone or any. You could be a drone for a day or something. I don't know. It just sounds a lot of fun. I kind of like that. I don't think I'd dive backwards in time or to a fantasy which is more archaic in terms of technology. I think generally what I do is I choose to be in a more advanced version of reality somehow. I guess I'd go with Ghost in the Shell. It's just something that springs to mind. There's probably better options, but thinking about it, I'd probably just, in 5 minutes I'd probably go with something like Ghost in the Shell, where it's transhumanism. Now, I wouldn't go for something so much as Deus Ex, whereas Deus Ex is very much a dystopian. To be fair, Ghost in the Shell is fairly dystopian, but Deus Ex is a bit more manipulative in how it does it, and it's very much a quasi sort of, you're not quite there, but there are certain elements of transhumanism. I guess I'd go with Ghost in the Shell. What's the least you sell out for? Don't answer that. I have no idea what I'd sell out for. I would need to value myself and also what I'm selling out. Also, I guess I haven't answered that, so fair enough. What do you hope for next year? Next year, I hope for 100,000 subscribers. We are at 86-ish at the moment. I guess I hope for 100,000 subscribers, and then a wall plaque from Google, which would be really weird. Like, I know that it will eventually be coming. I'm 14,000 subscribers away. But Google give you this silver play button in a frame at 100,000 subscribers, and it would just seem really weird to go from having this thing that is on the internet. I mean, I know I'm talking to you right now, but I'm talking to a camera personally. I know you are seeing me talk to you, but I'm talking to a camera. It would be very weird to get something back from the internet, to something physical that I would hang on my wall. It would be really weird to go from me just making silly videos into a webcam or a camera or recording my screen while I play a game and just speaking to a microphone to actually having a physical object back. For me, getting something digital away and getting a physical thing would be weird. And awesome, but weird. Also awesome, but again, weird. That's something that, I would like. That's something that I hope would be next year. I mean, if I don't get 14,000 subscribers next year, I would definitely question what's going on there, because surely I should get, 40,000 subscribers. We've gone up to 84 in a year and a half, 2 years? Less than 2 years. We're about a year and 1.7. Yeah, about that. So I'm sure we'll hit 100,000 next year, but that's going to be really weird for me, and I have no idea what I'm going to do to thank you guys. But probably squee and drink a lot of wine, or whatever's affordable. As for what else, I have no idea. I definitely want to do the educational content I've been talking about. I want to start that again. I've actually written a general outline of what I want to do for a nuclear physics set of talks, set of videos, a short set of videos about that. And I want to get started on that as, fairly soon in the new year. And a few other things. So generally, I'm not too certain. Generally, what I happen to do on this channel with EnterElysium is I tend to do games. So I guess we'll see how that goes. I mean, there's no games I'm massively looking forward to. There are a few that I'm definitely interested in, stuff like Mordheim, Blood Bowl 2, etc. Hearts of Iron 4. Those are all going to be interesting, but nothing that I'm like desperately pin my hopes on. I don't tend to pin my hopes on games because I tend to feel that they can often let you down, especially big budget games, so I just tend to wait until they come out. I don't tend to get hyped beforehand. I know some people get massively hyped and some people build channels on hype. But I personally don't like it that way. Personally, because it also pushes you into making bad purchasing decisions if you're buying on hype, because hype is entirely manufactured. Hype is entirely how you present your game before release, and I don't see the point in getting hyped over hype. I like to get personally hyped over an actual thing that I can play. Although that's just a bit weird, but whatever. Honestly, I don't know what to ask. My English is not that good. The quality is great and blah 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 blah. I don't need multiple videos a day. Your videos are great and a way to improve my language skills, and they're really entertaining. Yeah, I mean, there's no question there, but I have to say, the number of people, especially on my this war of mine, have said that, oh, you talk really fast. And personally, I know I talk really fast. I tend to get overexcited, and I tend to go like really fast with my words, and then I tend to stop and then think about it and pause and say and then I tend to talk really fast again. I can't lose my train of thought, and it goes really fast, and I need to get it all out, and I say all these words all back to back, and that's personally for me something about just my enunciation, how I express my passion for a subject, how I suddenly go really fast with a load of words. Like there, you saw me go up in speed and then slow down again as I wanted to emphasize a point. Now I understand this can be difficult for people out of a different region or language to understand, and frankly it's something that I'm willing to take feedback on, but it's something that I also have to try and bear in mind when I do my voiceovers and stuff, and that can vary because I tend to get into it, and once you're into it, it's harder to really keep a lid on how you're speaking, because what you're speaking is basically the medium by which you get your brain to the audience, and what I'm thinking about is my brain stuff. And I know I need to, personally, it's a thing to do with how I present myself, and I need to work on that. But it'd be interesting to see what you guys think. Do I need to speak slower at some points, or is it just, it's acceptable, you can barely understand, but you understand it's completely how I come across? Or do you think, sometimes you should speak a little bit slower so you can understand? I guess that's something for the audience to feedback below. Also, my English is absolutely terrible. I used the word balmy repeatedly in... not balmy as in crazy, but balmy as in, it's fairly warm. In a couple of RimWorld videos recently, and then I realised, because of the comments, that it's actually technically a piece of slang more common to north of England, and a lot of people around the world don't understand what balmy means. As opposed to balmy with an R, it's B-A-L-M-Y. So I guess my English is also kind of ingrained certain parts of slang. But I maybe it's because a lot of YouTubers who are British are Southern English, whereas I have a lot of Northern English stuff. Like I will say "gone," I'm gone somewhere, I'm going, which I try to tone down a bit. But I still don't realise that certain parts of my language are actually slang, so I guess I apologise for that. But yeah, anyway, this has been. Yeah, I'm out of questions. This has been the fortnightly Q&A. Hopefully you enjoyed. Thank you very much to the patrons for asking the questions, and thank you very much to YouTube for watching in general. Thank you very much for supporting the channel, and considering it's near Christmas, Merry Christmas to you all. And thank you very much for supporting the channel in 2014. It's crazy, we've grown so much. I can't express how ludicrous this all is, that I'm talking to a camera and yet earning a living. I don't understand. No, seriously. I really don't understand. But I've come to accept that. Maybe? Thank you very much for watching. If you've liked, please like, and if you're not subscribed, please consider subscribing. But until next time, stay shiny.